Thank you for putting The Amazing Generation in the background. How neat.
I loved the book. Okay, the inclusion of the graphic novel.
Oh.
Like, I loved all of the stats and all of the writing, of course, but anytime, like, the, 3 pages of the graphic novel would, like, end and the next, like, chapter or section would begin, I'd be like, wait, hold on a second. What about my friends? What's happening with my friends, though? I want to
Oh my
know.
God. That's so funny. I didn't realize you were our target audience. We thought it was 9 to 12, but I guess it was 41 also. It's great.
I might be 9 to 12. I guess you tell me after we talk, you're like, wow, how are you even existing in the world right now as a 41-year-old? Because I believe you are, in fact, 9.
I used to teach middle school at a all-boys school, so we'll get along just
Perfect.
fine.
This is great. We're going to have so much in common then. This is awesome.
Yeah.
This is great. This is the Outside Podcast with PaddyO. The first time the O'Connells all went camping together when I was a kid is seared into my memory. We were somewhere in the boonies a few hours outside Chicago using my parents' 70s gear. Imagine a canvas tent big enough for a small circus and a 2-burner stove that looked like they just lifted it off the range in our kitchen. We tromped through the woods, cooked hot dogs over the campfire, slept in sleeping bags, and I loved every second of it. That trip played a big part in why I moved to Colorado and devoted my life to being outdoors. It's also why I've made instilling a love of the outdoors in my toddler daughter a priority. Of course, because it's 2026, this doesn't just feel like a gift I'm bestowing on my daughter. It feels like an urgent inoculation against a growing threat to her well-being. The numbers are sobering. American kids spend upwards of 7 hours a day on phones, scrolling social media and gaming. That's the equivalent of 4 months a year. And if you dig a little deeper, the numbers are downright terrifying. Boys on social media are twice as likely to be depressed as those who aren't. Girls are 3 times more likely. Smartphones are proven to make body issues worse for 1 out of every 3 girls. These devastating side effects aren't just known by the companies who make the phones and the social media platforms. They're exploited through targeting that knows, for example, to serve a girl who just deleted a selfie ads for beauty products. Ugh. But even as I make daily time outside a priority for me and my daughter, who am I really kidding here? I'm on my phone constantly. Some of that use feels defensible. I mean, my kid's the cutest human of all time, and I have the pictures and videos to prove it. And where else would I store all the great hikes that I take her on? And I only get distracted by doom scrolling every, 45 to 90 seconds. Ugh. So how are we supposed to live with this technology in a way that's healthy and sustainable without going back to giant canvas circus tents and faux wood-paneled minivans? I don't know the answer to that question, but science journalist and author Catherine Price sure does. Catherine is a featured speaker at the upcoming Outside Days Festival in Denver and the author of 3 books that help people navigate their relationship to technology. The first, How to Break Up with Your Phone, balanced depressing evidence that these devices are turning our brains to oatmeal with a straightforward 30-day plan to develop the boundaries most of us need to avoid phone addiction. Her next book, The Power of Fun, draws from her own formative outdoor adventure, a post-college bike ride across the country, to develop a theory of, quote, true fun, the confluence of playfulness, connection, and flow state that measurably improves happiness and can be easily accessed outside. Her latest, co-written with the Anxious Generation author Jonathan Haidt, is called The Amazing Generation, Your Guide to Fun and Freedom in a Screen-Filled World. And it translates both writers' research into actionable advice for young adults. But I can attest that there's plenty in there for ye ol' adults, too. If you'll be in Denver at the end of May, you should absolutely come hear Catherine speak to all this in person at Outside Days. In the meantime, our conversation hopefully leaves you feeling a little bit better equipped to handle an increasingly digital world by more meaningfully engaging with the real world. Not to mention, she has the best burnt toast story we may have ever had on this podcast. Seriously, you'll never look at your coffee cup the same way again. I promise you. First things first, burnt toast. What's your last humbling and or hilarious moment outside?
I was thinking about my answer to this question and about whether I was actually going to tell it.
Oh, I love it already.
I haven't told this story to anyone other than my husband and one friend. We went on and now all of your listeners, we went on a river rafting trip last year in Idaho, which was beautiful. But you were supposed to pee into the river. They didn't want us peeing on the sand.
Yes,
supposed
correct.
to pee into the river. Right.
Yes.
Okay. So
I know this
I don't have a and that is inconvenient for this. It's very inconvenient because, as anyone who is a woman would tell you, like, that means you have to go into the river or squat on the side.
Yes.
Right? Like,
This
those
is
are your
correct.
choices.
Yes.
Okay. So you're with a group of like 30 people on an open beach, and there's all these kids running around. And they said there's nothing weird about peeing. It's only weird if you look. Well, there were a lot of kids who were looking, so that was uncomfortable. And then to go into the water, obviously you get wet because you're up to your waist in water. So I did, and it was sand. The beaches were sand. So what I'm trying to say is that I didn't like that setup. I was enormously stressed about peeing for the entire like 5-day trip. And in the middle of the night, I was like, I do not want to leave this tent and walk across the sand and pee in the river and come back with wet feet with sand, not because I peed on them because of the river, and then get wet sand into my tent. And so I peed into my coffee cup. That's why I burnt toast. And I was going to bring that cup to have water during our interview, but I forgot it downstairs.
I gotta ask, like, was the next morning's coffee like really terrible?
I washed it. it. I mean, that was like honestly the least of my concerns at that point. Here's the concern.
Yeah.
How big is the human bladder compared to your coffee cup?
Oh,
that's the concern.
yeah.
Because you're like, it's like
totally.
2 a.m.
Yeah.
And you're like, I can't see, right? I can't really, also really hope I'm aiming well. Like this could go very poorly.
They do make a product called the Shiwi. Have you heard of this?
Oh, are you talking about the bags like the Porta-John or the Porta
No. It is a device that allows women to pee while standing up. It's like a funnel type situation. You know what I did not think we were going to start our conversation off with? This. Yeah. This is, Catherine, I am very excited about where we're headed.
I think we're done. I mean,
let's get into it. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, thanks for tuning in, folks. We'll see ya. All right, let's get into it. I'd like to start things out with you with a little bit of storytelling. Can you
another
please?
One? Okay.
Yes, another story. Maybe this will include urination, maybe it won't. Can you please describe a typical summer day from your youth? You're free of school responsibilities. The chores are done at home. You can do whatever you want, wherever you want. So, what do you do?
Well, I grew up in Manhattan, and so in the 80s. And so 80s and 90s. So that was like not that free or outdoors of an experience, but I did spend a lot of summers in rural New Jersey. Okay. So the reality of a lot of summer days, I'm also an only child, was being in New Jersey in a pretty much un-air-conditioned house, being very hot. I spent a fair amount of time, I guess, swimming and searching for frogs. So that was fun. I enjoyed that.
Were in like forest preserves or just like in the backyard? Or
like around, like in the backyard. And like there was a boggy area. I was not as aware of Lyme disease as I am now. And it's not as big of an issue. But then I would say that my idea, my favorite summer days was when I was a camp counselor at a YMCA camp in the Berkshires in Massachusetts with this beautiful 90-acre lake that they somehow, I don't know how they got this. It was the YMCA. I don't know how they got this lake. The AT was on the other side of the lake, but it was this beautiful, beautiful lake. And I would spend my days outside. I taught water skiing, even though I really don't know how to water ski. I don't know how I did that. I guess I was good enough at like getting kids up on skis. Yeah. And so I'd spend the day like in the ski boat with these like Australian motorboat drivers. And then I taught writing to kids in a not school context. So they had fun. It was just beautiful and outdoors and just lovely.
Beautiful. Wonderful. This is great. Now pretend as if you are the same age, same set of circumstances, but it's the year 2026. Describe what you think your typical summer day would look like as a kid today.
Well, I don't know in terms of me as a kid, but I think that most kids would spend most of that time on screens. I mean, I think that's definitely true. Actually, here's a story. Here's another story. Okay. I know I would have spent time online because I grew up like as the internet was becoming more popular, and I was in 9th grade or so when AOL started. And not only did I quickly, like I love writing letters, unsurprisingly, because I'm a writer. So as soon as email came out, I was writing tons of emails to people I saw in school all day. And then I had Teen Chat, which was like the early AOL chat rooms. And I used to spend hours. This is, you're just getting me to make all my confessions right at the beginning of this interview. I would spend, it was when you had to tie up the long distance phone line to call. Quote, teen chat room, heavy quotation marks, is who knows who I was chatting with. But what I was doing in these teen chat rooms was defending people against bullies by correcting the bullies' grammar. I would call them out on apostrophes. And then I'd pee in a cup. No, just to really prove my point. No, that's what so anyway, and then I got a Game Boy, like the earliest Game Boy, and I just found it again. Like we're talking like Tetris, where you had the card, it's a black and white screen. I used to charge my mother to play it because she loved Tetris. I made like $20 off of her, 10 cents a game. It was a lot of games. I can still sing you the theme song for that. So I think I would have spent a lot of time on a phone, like kids do today, because it's so I was like addicted to teen chat rooms.
Well, the conflict that I'm trying to dig into is like, what do you as the child lose out on between the kid who's going into the bog, who is looking for frogs, who is the camp counselor, who's water skiing and in the lake all day, versus the kid who's on the Game Boy, on the teen chat rooms, in front of a screen all day long?
Well, I think life, you miss out on life is the real answer, because there's nothing, I don't remember any specifics of those teen chat rooms. I don't remember any Tetris games that I played, as opposed to I have concrete memories of things I did during the summers when I was out
playing Ghosts in the Graveyard or Kick the Can or giant, games of like, the entire neighborhood is playing Capture the Flag or something together.
Well, not so much in Manhattan, but yes, at camp, like days off. I could tell you about specific days off. I could tell you about things I did in Manhattan. They're not going to be very exciting, but like, I used to go with my I'm a huge dork if people have not noticed this, but I used to go with my friends to the coffee shop on the corner in our pajamas, and we'd play board games on Friday nights. Joking aside, like concrete memories and friendships and relationships, that's what I had as a kid and teenager. And I still have some of those physical letters that I wrote to friends and to camp friends during that time. I just gave a talk actually in front of an association of camps in this region, and I was really thinking about the camp experience. I can go on about that. I still organize camps for friends, but just this creation of a temporary community that you get to be a part of, and this playfulness and this sense of fun and this connection and this carefree feeling. I think that's another thing you really miss out on, is this feeling of total freedom, even if you're not necessarily free from your parents' supervision, but like just being out and doing stuff in the world and not having to-do lists and not having this feeling of performance that so many kids have because of social media. There was just none of that.
Let's talk about that, because I want to, in the difference between those two settings for a kid's summer day or weekend day, what are the risks between the two and what is at risk?
Well, there's a lot of risks. I can get as dark as you want me to in this section, but if you think about what many parents do today, and I'm the parent of a now 11-year-old, we tend to, as Jonathan Haidt likes to say, overprotect kids in the real world and then underprotect them online.
Yeah.
Because there's so many risks and dangers. I mean, again, joking aside, like who was I chatting with in teen chat? I loved this one person whose screen name was Paradox 1. Who was that guy?
Seriously.
Who was that person? I have no idea. I do not think that person was actually a 16-year-old, right? Like, no. And it wasn't anything sketchy that happened, but point being, even then, when you're online, you have access to all these strangers, and these strangers have access to you. And now that risk is actually truly horrifying in terms of what kids can find and who they can encounter and who can contact them online in a way that should really make any parent honestly scared. And it's much safer actually to send your kid out of the house to play in the neighborhood with real people than it is to have them be alone online. So that, I think, is what the risk is. And, it's drug dealing, it's sextortion, it's predators. I mean, the list goes on. It's really pretty horrible. Yeah. But then in terms of what is at risk, I really think that you're risking not having any memories of your childhood or teen years, which is to say of your life. And I've heard that from an increasing number of young people who did grow up with smartphones and social media, just talking about the regrets that they have about their own lives, because they feel like if they look back at their teen years, they don't have memories.
I kind of see our chat today broken up into two equal parts. The show is about how the outdoors impacts our lives. But before you and I can really chat about that, we need to talk about something which I think is kind of like decidedly indoorsy, and it's your area of expertise, which is phone stuff. So just a few days ago.
Tagline.
Yes, exactly. I do phone stuff. So just a few days ago, I finished your new book, The Amazing Generation. It is great. I loved it. In the book, you investigate this idea of the phone-based childhood. And I'm hoping for our listeners who have yet to read the book that you can define what that is and how that informs our brain's defend mode versus discover mode.
Sure. So this is very much inspired by the anxious generation. But John has a great term, the phone-based childhood versus the play-based childhood. Mm-hmm. And the point being that for all of human history, up till smartphones and social media and the internet became so readily accessible, we had what he calls the play-based childhood, which was a long period of play and exploration. And you can see that in mammals of all kinds. And humans have a very long childhood, as we know, as I'm in the midst of dealing with right now. And part
Some of us
that
are 41 and still in our very long childhood.
Is still exactly. It's a good way to be, I think. Yeah. But there's a lot that this playfulness, this openness, this exploratory state does for us in terms of teaching us skills, teaching us how to get along socially, creating bonds as a community. Mm-hmm. So play-based childhood is very important. The contrast is the phone-based childhood, which is where you have the majority of your time spent not out in the world actively engaging, but instead passively scrolling and consuming content or entertainment on a phone. So you're not really living your life. You're consuming content, maybe videos of other people living their life, but you're not actually out there playing. You're not exploring. John would talk about in terms of what the play-based childhood helps you get into is this discover mode, as he calls it, which is this open state where you feel confident about exploring the world. New things don't feel like threats. They feel like opportunities. You just feel like very open. I mean, there's actually a physical kind of movement that goes with that, a very open, confident, exploratory state. And that is a very good state to be in terms of your development, in terms of learning, in terms of relationship building, in terms of self-confidence, etc. The contrast would be what he calls defend mode, which is kind of this much more defensive state you get into if you feel like you're constantly under threat. The way we use it in the book is that if you are, for example, constantly on social media where you're judging yourself, you're being judged by others, you're performing for other people, you constantly are on guard against people criticizing you or bullying you or just attacking you in some way, you physiologically get into a different state where you are much more defensive. It's this kind of hunched over, like crouched defensive posture, but also state of being. And that is a state that it's not conducive to learning. It's not conducive to developing relationships. New things feel like threats instead of opportunities. So it's not a great way to live. And it's certainly not an enjoyable way to live. And it's not a state where you're going to be able to relax and have fun and create memories with other people.
Well, when I read that feeling disconnected can be just as detrimental to our health as smoking cigarettes, I was like, oh my God, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I started to think about the difference between isolation and solitude. For outdoorsy folks, I think we seek solitude maybe most of the time, at least a significant portion of the time, when we, go on big hikes or long runs, backcountry ski trips, like what have you. And I think that many of us may believe that we're getting a similar experience at, say, like the end of our workday when we're on the couch scrolling. But are we?
No. I mean, you might be just like checked out. I would compare that more to like having a beer or like getting a drink. But not even that, because that often is social, honestly. I think that there's definitely a difference between isolation and solitude. Isolation is, it depends on how you feel about it. If you're like alone on a hike and you feel really lonely and you wish you were with someone else and you feel like it wasn't by choice and you just are kind of down about it, that's feeling more isolated. That's going to have a different effect on your body than saying, oh, I just really want to go out in nature alone and have this experience just for myself. That's totally a different state. And it's one of those lovely moments or lovely times when you can trust your gut on this. So I have a background as, a science and health journalist. I have type 1 diabetes and I do a lot of medical reporting. So I'm very into randomized controlled studies and scientific evidence. But I also think in this realm, there's many situations in which we actually can trust our guts. And if you ask yourself, do you really feel the same after you just sit on the couch and look through Instagram posts about hiking versus like going out on a trail and having a sunset walk with your dog? I mean, it doesn't feel the same. It's not the same.
Okay. Well, I need to like tap into your expertise on a personal level here because my wife and I, we are outdoor humans. That is just how we see ourselves. It's informed our entire lives. We've done incredible adventures together. We continue to do those incredible adventures, far flung and in our back yard in Colorado, and we're continuing that that with our baby girl, our little daughter. Now, we also have this thing where we'll tell each other at the end of the day when the work tasks have added up with the personal tasks, with the parenting tasks, we'll look at each other and we'll just say, I've popped. And that is quickly followed up with something like us saying to one another, like, I need to be dumb on the couch. And we'll just sit next to each other. Maybe we'll take in, a movie or a TV show, or we'll read. Very often it's like silently scrolling next to one another. In your expert opinion, is that okay?
Oh man, asking me all judgy. Yes, I think that we all need a break. I think actually what is really impressive about what you just described is the fact that you're both very aware of it. This is something that you both kind of scan for, and then you have a vocabulary to express that to each other. What I would say is that, it makes total sense, and it's important to have these moments of decompression. But what you described as, quote, getting dumb on the couch, those were 3 different categories at least that you mentioned. I think it's fine to call it getting dumb on the couch, but I would say that just based on my research into fun, reading together is going to feel different from scrolling and consuming content together versus watching a show or a movie together. Not to judge any of those, as being better or worse, but reading is going to be a very immersive experience that probably will get you into more of a state of flow, of like mental flow, where you really do kind of finish it feeling like you've stepped into a different world in what for many people feels like a more nourishing way than, for example, scrolling through hundreds of posts or hundreds of short videos on a social media app, or heaven forbid, like looking at the news for that time. That's not going to relax your brain.
No.
Both because of the content, but also because it's all these little snippets, especially for short form video, that's really going to affect your attention span and probably make you feel more exhausted than you did before you started. And then watching a TV show or a movie together, that's a different experience where it's kind of like it is a shared experience between the two of you, provided you're not simultaneously also scrolling through stuff. And that could be a really nice thing to do. So I would say, it's great that you're recognizing that there's times when you have popped and you like need to be dumb on the couch. And then the question is just, okay, maybe get curious about how each of those categories of things makes you feel individually and together when you do them. And then you can just use that information to inform what you choose in those moments. Maybe you do want to just space out and scroll through mindless stuff on the internet, and that's fine. I think the point is to just make it intentional. But I think it sounds like you're well on your way to doing that. It would be silly to say we should be totally engaged and present and active at all periods of time. That would not be achievable. We talk a lot in the book about friendship and freedom and fun. And
I love that. Love
the
that
difference
chapter.
between fake freedom and fake friendship and fake fun versus the real stuff. I think the reason all of us have gotten sucked into spending so much time on smartphones and social media is because all of us as humans want more friendship. We want to feel more connected. We want to feel free, and we want to have fun. And so if we're convinced by companies that the way to get those things is through their products, we're going to spend a lot of time on their products, especially if they're designed to addict us, which they are. And it's especially true for kids. And so when I'm speaking to either parents or kids, I say it's totally developmentally appropriate for young people, like especially for young people, to want to have more freedom from their parents and freedom to explore their own interests and figure out who they are. They want to spend more time with their friends without their parents, and they want to have more fun. The question is, do you want to try to get those things through a device that's been designed to addict you and is lying to you, or do you want to get it through the good stuff? And so the goal of the book is to reveal this kind of mass manipulation to kids, show them that there is this other path available, and that there are other young people whom we refer to as rebels in this book who are choosing this alternate path. Just today, there's a story in the New York Times Magazine about late teenagers and early 20-somethings who are choosing actually to use flip phones because they don't want to be a part of this. I also think that parents should keep in mind the fact that we really obsess over what our kids will miss out on if we don't give them smartphones and social media, which is of course what they're going to be telling us.
Yeah.
But what really is at stake is what you and I were talking about at the beginning of this conversation, which is their ability to have real lives, real friendships, real memories. I hear from so many young people who regret spending time on these devices and apps when they were teenagers. And as you know, we incorporated a lot of quotes from those young people in the book to make that point. I would say that for the younger generation, like your daughter's generation, my daughter's kind of right at the cusp. Like that's why this book was so urgent for me personally, because they're the dividing line. You might have to worry about AI stuff more than we do in terms of AI toys and all that creepy, terrifying stuff. But in terms of societal
no robots
views
in
towards
the house. I said it
no
1,000
robots,
times.
Yeah, exactly. No robots having relationships with children. It seems like that should be a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But the shift in society over the past 3 years has been just astonishing in terms of phone-free schools. I mean, by the time your daughter is in grade school, there's no way that high schools are going to be allowing phones in schools. It's just not going to be a thing. And then an increasing number of young people waking up and being like, I don't want this for myself. And then there's just a lot of awareness now growing about ed tech, so quote educational technology. I just think that there actually truly is a rebellion brewing and growing among people of all ages against big tech. Like, they are making themselves out to be villains. It is their big tobacco moment.
Yeah.
So all that is to say that I think going forward, we're going to look back and be like, wow, I can't believe that we allowed this. It's like, my mom is a retired nurse and she talks about how surgeons used to smoke in the operating room. You know,
yeah.
Like, what? Like, that level of like, what were we doing?
Totally. Well, help me work through my own personal contradiction on this matter, because especially after becoming a dad, I've become definitely more and more aware of the negative impacts my phone has on my mood. But I also use my phone all the time in service of the outdoor time that absolutely improves my mood and just straight up makes me who I am. I use weather and mapping apps to plan trips and big days in the backcountry. I've, tracked my time and mileage for run training, tracked my nutrition. And even though I'm trying to spend less time on it, social media has led me to make real connections with strangers. It's helped me with my career and on and on. So It's not all bad, right? Or am I just lying to myself?
I don't know if you're lying to yourself. That's a separate question. It's about my pay grade. Sorry. We'll meet in person in Colorado and then we can try to tease that out.
You can walk around, just observe me for a 24-hour period and tell me about
exactly. It won't be creepy.
Yes,
it won't
perfect.
be creepy. I'll interview your loved ones.
That'll be great.
No, but I would say that you're hitting on something really important, which is that it's not to say that technology is all bad. That's the whole challenge. If these things were like cigarettes, then it would be a lot easier to just say no to them, and just don't start smoking. But like you're saying, a smartphone is essentially a Swiss Army knife, or at least it should be. The problem is that it also comes with all these problematic things. It comes with constant connectivity to everybody, I mean, even people that you care about, like I feel constantly overwhelmed by text messages and emails. And then obviously you have the news and you have social media and you have gaming. And for a lot of young people, like you have shopping, all of these temptations that are on the smartphone. So what I do tell people when I talk with people about how to break with your phone is that one of the first steps is to just tease out some of those categories, to actually start to identify what are the apps that are really purely tools for you. I mean, you might just get a regular compass, an actual compass, but like a compass app would be that, or like a navigation app, or your banking app, or some of the things you were mentioning that are just straight up tools. You're probably not going to spend too much time looking at your banking app. You're not going to get sucked into a scrolling session. And then you might have some things that... Right, I know. There are some things where they are useful in certain contexts for certain purposes, like you were just saying with social media. And that kind of depends on the person. Some people, there really is no use for social media. But if you do have one, then that's a matter of saying, okay, well, that's an app that is very powerfully designed to get me to spend more time on it than I want to.
Yeah.
Right, so that's a problematic category of app that it's going to require more attention to use in a way that benefits you more than it does the social media company. And then you might have some other apps where you're like, that is just a waste of time. Maybe it's a video game that you realize you don't want to be playing, or a shopping site you're wasting money on. So what I would recommend that people do, and perhaps you as well, is actually take some time, maybe with your wife. It can be a fun thing to do together, is like actually have a conversation about, okay, what are our phones useful for, in what context, how are they adding to our lives? An example for me would be a guitar tab app that I can use with friends if we're playing music together, and then we all can just pick a random song and we can get the same tab. That's amazing. Or the voice memos app, all these things. What's a tool app? And those things are fine. And you can redesign your home screen so that it actually contains those things. I might suggest, though, that even with social media, that you experiment with using that from a desktop instead of a phone, because the desktop version is much less sticky. It's not as addictively designed, and it's also bound to a physical location in a way that checking social media on your phone is not. So I'd kind of try to tease out those categories much in the same way that you might make differentiations between different types of food, of like what's junk food versus like nourishing food versus delicious in small portions, but maybe you don't want to have too much of it. And then I would also recommend really taking advantage of some of the tools that exist now in terms of app blockers. And if you put a little bit of effort into that, you can get a lot further towards the goal of turning your phone from a temptation into a useful Swiss Army-like tool. All right,
Near the end of the amazing generation in the chapter, How to Fill Your Life with Real Friendships, Freedom, and Fun, there's a 2-page spread, a list of phone-free activities, things like go camping, ride a bike, build a fort, stargaze, stare at the clouds, skip stones, on and on and on. And this is where your new book echoes lessons from the other book that you wrote, The Power of Fun. And I want to spend some time digging into the idea of fun and your personal experiences here and your expertise. First, can you please define fun and give us some examples from your own life?
Sure. The reason I wrote that book is because I broke up with my phone. I had more time. I created better boundaries with it. And then I was like, oh my God, I don't actually know what I want to do with my time. Mm-hmm. And I ended up taking a guitar class and realizing this was like buoying my spirits for the entire week. And I couldn't really figure out why it was making me feel so joyful. And I couldn't put my finger on what the name was for that feeling. But I eventually was like, oh, I'm having fun. It's not so much about the guitar playing per se, although I enjoyed that, but it was the dynamic of the class of being with this group of adults, feeling very carefree, no responsibilities for that hour and a half, just doing something together. I was like, I'm having fun. And I got curious about what fun is. And when I looked in the dictionary to see what the dictionary said, it didn't match up with the feeling I was having, which was very energizing and life-giving, because the dictionary just says it's like enjoyment or amusement or lighthearted pleasure. I was experiencing something much bigger than that. It led me to come up with a different definition of what I call real or true fun, which is basically that it's the confluence of 3 states. And if I were giving a presentation about this, I'd have a Venn diagram. So if you imagine 3 circles with an overlap in the center, and one of the circles is playfulness, one is connection, and one is flow. Playfulness does not mean that you have to play a game. It doesn't mean being childish. It's more like childlike, like having a lighthearted attitude, not being afraid to laugh, moments in which your inner critic is silent. You feel very open and kind of carefree, and you're looking for the light side of life, or lighthearted. The connected piece is this feeling of having a special shared experience. It was very interesting because the vast majority of stories people told me had another person in them, even if they were self-described introverts. Sometimes there was the sense of like connection with the environment or like with your physical body, but really it was more than 90% of the stories were with another person. Yeah. And then flow, as many of your listeners probably know, is a psychological term that refers to the state you get into when you're totally actively engaged in an activity to the point that you can almost lose track of time, like an athlete playing a game, a musician playing a piece of music. The psychologist who coined the term flow, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, he studied rock climbers, so where you're totally engaged, but it's very different from losing track of time and you're being dumb on the couch moments or watching Netflix. That's passive consumption, and that would be what he would have called junk flow. It's really being entertained and passively engaged. Real flow is like active. I also always like to point out that anything that distracts you will kick you out of flow by definition. And so anything that distracts you will also kick you out of having fun. Anyway, my definition of fun is that it is this magic confluence of playfulness and connection and flow. It's a feeling, it's not an activity. I always like to really emphasize that, because a lot of people will say, oh, I have fun when I'm hiking. I have fun when I'm skiing or whatever. But you always have like one version of that experience that's a lot more fun than others. One time when you went with your best friend on a hike and it was just like the most fun ever, and then some other time when it wasn't. It might be like pouring rain and you're like, oh, that technically a rainy hike wouldn't sound like an activity that's fun, but because of the experience we had with the person, the feeling was actually fun.
Yes.
So to answer your question, it's less about like what do I find fun in terms of activities. It's more like experiences in which I've had a ton of fun. I call those, I do think of them as fun magnets. So like my husband is a fun magnet for me, or my best friend from journalism school, or maybe there's some people that you're not that close with, but you always have fun with them. Those would be fun magnets. For me, activities that are fun magnets, playing music with friends is one, like having dinner parties with my husband is one, playing outside, like that's a fun magnet for me. A setting would be summer camps or being by lakes. I'm more of a lake person than a beach person.
Let's talk about one of the experiences you've had that was kind of a basis for this idea of what true fun is. Post-college, you went on a cross-country bike trip. Let's talk about this.
Close reader of The Power of Fun, yes.
What was your route? How long did it take? Why was it so hard and so awful and so damn fun? And how did this experience become part of the foundational concept of The Power of Fun?
It took 63 days. Yeah. It was the summer after college. So, it's actually interesting. That's basically the amount of time that people are spending scrolling on social media. It's actually less. It took less time to bike across the entire country than teenagers are spending on social media and YouTube. Yeah, that's horrifying. I hadn't really put that together. It was a fundraiser technically for Habitat for Humanity, but it was really personally an excuse to spend the summer after graduation hanging out with some of my closest friends. And so it was a group of 30 of us, and we biked from Connecticut all the way to San Francisco. So we dipped our wheels in the Atlantic Ocean and then dipped them into the Pacific at the end. Why was it hard? Because of the Rockies and because of the United States. That's why it was hard.
Yeah, it's really the Rockies.
Hard. Yeah. I remember biking through Kansas, which BTW is not flat. It slants slightly upwards towards the Rockies, and we were biking against the wind toward the Rockies. And so we spent I don't know how long in Kansas in July biking, seeing the Rockies and just knowing I have to bike over those.
This is bad. But oh wait, it's going to get worse.
It's going to get worse than I can see it. And we were biking like 80 to 100 miles a day, maybe 60 to 100 miles a day.
Wow.
So it was a lot of time in spandex. And it was also objectively stupid. Like, it was dangerous. Like, people did not like us biking. They were aggressive drivers and heat stroke and norovirus. There was anyway. But with all that said, it was before smartphones. It was before social media. It was in the summer of 2001. And as I said, some of these people already were my close friends. So we had 63 days of just being together. Mm-hmm. And it was very, very clearly defined. You woke up in the morning, at like 5 o'clock in the morning to try to beat the heat. And your goal was to bike to the next place you were sleeping. That was the whole goal. And along the way, it sucked. But you were outside. We biked through absolutely beautiful. We biked up Trail Ridge Road and then down the other side in a hailstorm. That was stupid. So we saw beautiful things, but we also just had all these opportunities to play with each other. And again, there were no smartphones, there was no social media. So I think we kept a blog, but that was our only real contact to the outside world. Like, maybe we used a payphone to call our families, or I remember writing letters, but it was a very self-contained experience where we made our own entertainment. And so we made our own fun. I remember there was one day, I have no idea why they did this, but some of my friends created this draft competition, like a draft pick competition, where we had a bicycle challenge Olympics, and we all did these silly games in some playground of the place we were staying. It just was pointless and silly and fun. Or there was one day where we went to the Johnson shut-ins and we slid down water slides. We just did these playful things. It was the definition of fun, even though would I choose to again bike for 63 days, 80 to 100 miles a day through, Kansas in July? Probably not with cars. But it really was this incredible bonding time. And I know that if I'm still friends with a lot of those people, they're still my closest friends. We have this whole set of shared memories together. And I know that even the people I wasn't close to on that trip, if I saw them today, we would instantly be able to fall into a conversation because we had that repeated interaction. Sleeping on the floor together, we weren't sleeping in hotels. We were sleeping on church basement floors or any place that would host us. Yeah. It was really intense. Part of it was the intensity of it. But so much laughter. I think what I wrote in the Power of Fun is I laughed so hard every single day. And I miss that, honestly, as an adult and as a parent and as a freelancer without very much of a community. I desperately miss that feeling.
To me, that experience really exemplifies this idea of true fun, of where all of these circles are overlapping. And surely you experienced flow during that trip, and flow is this major ingredient in true fun and inherent, right, in so many outdoor activities, whether through adrenaline, say in skiing or mountain biking, or endurance sports like running or, cycling across the entire country. Wow. What role does risk, though, or uncertainty in nature play in true fun?
I think it depends on the person. So this was something I referred to in that book as a fun factor. Basically, if you figure out what your fun magnets are, again, those are the settings and the activities and the people that are more likely to generate this feeling of playful connected flow for you. There's also fun factors, which are kind of characteristics of activities or states of mind that might be conducive to fun for you or might not. And I found real discrepancies between people in terms of particularly risk or, adrenaline. Is that feeling of being thrilled in that way? Does that make you feel like you're having fun, or does it make you scared? Which is not a fun feeling. And so I think it depends on the person, to answer your question. But I actually was thinking, it's funny that you bring up the risk. I actually was thinking about this in terms of skiing this past winter. I've become much more risk averse as I've gotten older. I always was pretty risk averse, to be honest. But I was thinking about how ski levels, blue, black, green, those are actual levels of what it takes to get into flow for different people, which is kind of an interesting thing to think of. Because, the most traditional definition of flow is when you're right at your limit of challenge, where the challenge feels invigorating and fun, it doesn't feel terrifying.
Sure.
And it feels manageable, but you have to be totally in it. So are you someone who finds that level of flow on a green slope or on a blue slope, or is yours a black diamond level of flow? I just thought it was kind of fun to think about.
Are you more of the like moving meditation type flow person, like a runner or, endurance cycling, something like that? Or are you the adrenaline type?
I think actually that ski analogy is a good one for people to think of, because that is a level of risk, right? Obviously there's skill also, but I'm a solid like green to blue, I would say. Like I don't like the feeling of risk. I've never broken a bone. I'd like to keep it that way.
Wow.
That's not where I find fun. Like, anywhere where I'm like, ooh, if one thing went wrong, I would end up in the emergency room. No, thank you. I don't need that. But that really does differ between people. And I think it's interesting, again, to kind of tease that out both personally and then with your loved one. Like, you and your wife talking about, like, where do you fall on these fun factors? Like, some people really like new things. Some people don't really like new things. Some people love learning and like being a beginner. And some people like mastery more than that. Like, there's all these kind of subtle distinctions. And I actually put a quiz together, and in the book, there's a whole list of fun factors. But just figuring out, like, what are the characteristics that lead to this feeling for you? And then how do they differ from the people you love, or how are they the same? And then also, I'm kind of getting on a tangent here, but I think it has been personally very useful to think about fun magnets and fun factors so that you know where you overlap with the person you live with or that you're in a relationship with, and you know where you're separate. And so you can support each other doing separate activities. Like right now, my husband, one of his fun magnets is disc golf. He's gotten really into disc golf. Not my thing. Like, I would make it much less fun. Yeah. I would be not fun, right? But that means that if he's like, oh, I want to do a disc golf tournament on Sunday morning, is that cool? I'll be like, yes, I will watch our daughter. You go do that, because I know you're going to have fun.
What about your daughter, though? How are you making sure that she's getting into the Venn diagram? How are you making sure that she's getting into flow state?
I think the thing, to take a step back on that I found with parenting, is just trying my best to observe my child from afar without trying to put my own desires onto her. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, who are you? Like, what is your personality? I would say that she doesn't gravitate towards sports or athletics in the same way I did as a kid. She does like being outside. She finds, I wouldn't say that she's risk-taking. She just tends to get in a lot of accidents. So that's a separate thing. So we've been to the emergency room like a fair amount with her, and she's broken bones from things, but that's not, I don't think, because she enjoys that feeling per se, if that makes sense. But she loves observing nature. When we did that river trip where I was busy peeing in a coffee cup, she spent hours just watching tadpoles on the side of the river, like leaning over and just trying to catch minnows and tadpoles, and then looking for rocks. I mean, she was in total flow, and she loved, I guess she does kind of like the feeling of adrenaline, because she was sitting in the bull seat, or whatever they call the front of the raft. We called it the yeehaw seat, and she loved that, the feeling of being bounced up and down on that. So I don't know. I mean, I really am trying to give her, my husband and I are both trying to expose her to as many opportunities to have experiences as we can, and try to help her discover mode, and not to, if we have apprehensions or fears, to not transfer those over to her. Like, one example, we went on a trip to Spain, and we found this Airbnb experience that was going into this cave in Mallorca. But you basically like swam in open water to this mouth of this cave, and there was no observable entrance. I was like, how do we get into the cave? And then I realized, you have to go underwater when a wave comes out. And they're like, most kids are freaking terrified of that. And I'm like, oh, I'm kind of terrified of that. She's just like, okay, just went right in. Was like, fine. So I don't know. I think we try not to push her. We try to just observe who she is, but at the same time, give her opportunities, and then not let our fears, not precede her with our fears. But she'll tell you, she just told me this weekend, she's like, Mama, you got me worried about ticks way too early in my life. And I was like, I'm sorry. I think it's really important to train yourself to be open to opportunities for fun, even if it's like tiny little moments that might be floating around you. The analogy I like to use, there was a guy who told me that he had had a ton of fun. He was sitting on a park bench with his nephew, and they had true fun trying to catch leaves as they fell from a tree, which actually it is quite fun. I've tried to do it since then. And I said to him, oh my God, that's such a beautiful metaphor, because it really represents the idea that there are all these tiny opportunities for fun around us all the time. All we need to do is learn how to reach out and grab them. And by that, I mean, you need to put away your freaking phone, because you're not going to connect with anybody you're not going to notice anything in the world around you if you're on your phone. You do need to get out, get out, be around other people, be in nature, just be out in the world, and then look around and then notice opportunities for a moment of playfulness, sharing a joke, like even something that small, or a way to connect with someone, or a way to get into flow. Like, just open yourself up and notice these opportunities for micro moments of fun. I think you need to actually, as an adult, engineer some opportunities for fun by knowing what's most likely to lead you to that state and putting those on your calendar and making plans for it. And that does take work. And then also just opening yourself up, getting out in the world and just saying yes to opportunities that might be out there. I mean, ideally, you'd have a couple hours of fun, but even just having like 30 seconds of fun when you're joking around with somebody, that counts.
I think a lot of times with outdoorsy folks, the reason that these pursuits of ours, these mountain sports, these activities direct our entire lives is because they're fun. It's what we used to do as kids. Like, I want to go play outside with my friends. Now, the knock on that often happens is that, well, this is a frivolous pursuit. It's self-indulgent. It is unserious. It is a waste of time. What do you say to that?
Well, everyone thinks fun is frivolous, and I can say quite confidently that it's not frivolous at all. There's many things that fun does. There's very little research on fun per se, I should say. Fun is not studied as an academic subject or a scientific subject. When I looked on PubMed, the database of biomedical literature for fun, the top hit at that moment was an article that was called "Putting the Fun in Fungi," and it was about toenail fungus. And I was like,
oh, Jesus.
It's not the fun I'm talking about. There's like basically no one. It's not in the index of psychology textbooks. It's not in the index of books about happiness. Wow. It's quite shocking. Fun does not get studied. I think it's because there's not really a good definition until now. And also because, like, if you've got to choose between fun and cancer, you're probably going to choose the research proposal about cancer. But anyway, there's not research on fun. But if you think about playfulness and connection and flow, there's tons of research in all three of those states about how they're good for us both mentally but also physiologically and physically. Part of the reason that people are so passionate about outdoor pursuits is it's kind of sanctioned playing. Like, it is a form of play, unless you get totally really serious and are like trying to climb a mountain for the sake of just climbing the mountain as opposed to like going at it for the experience. But it is this sanctioned play. It is one of the few opportunities that adults have for creating play communities, as I think of it. I think it's so important for us to have play communities, and they're really hard to build as adults. But if you have some friends you hike with, or you ski with, or you bike with, or whatever, that's your play community. It is so important. It fills you up. Fun is energizing. It creates connections and relationships. It creates memories. Like, we remember the times that we truly have fun with other people. We are in a state where we learn better. I mean, I don't like to list benefits of fun as if the benefits are the reason you should prioritize fun. I think you should have fun because it's fun. But if I have to list out benefits, it is a state in which you learn. It's important for parents to recognize for their kids. Think about your favorite teacher. You probably loved them because they made the class subject fun. It builds community. It erases differences. Like, if you have fun with somebody, we've all had this experience if you're like dancing with a random person at a wedding you never would have had fun with, but you have fun on the dance floor, like your uncle who's like the totally opposite political party or whatever. Yeah. It's like you actually connect as humans, which in our polarized world is absolutely essential. So I think fun would solve a lot of problems that we're going through where we don't see each other as human beings, because it does have this difference erasing potential. And then also it does stuff to us physically. So you were alluding to the fact that there's research showing that loneliness and isolation can be as detrimental to our health as smoking cigarettes, which is nuts to think about. Also, being emotionally stressed is very bad for us physically, and both of those have to do with elevation of cortisol levels, which is a stress hormone that helps us respond to physical threats like being chased, by elevating our blood glucose and our blood pressure and our heart rates. Like, great if you have to run away. Over time, you can see why that would lead to an increased risk of things like type 2 diabetes and stroke and obesity. And there's a very long list of the potential health effects of cortisol elevated over time. But if you buy my definition of fun, that it is a state of connection and that it's the state in which you feel relaxed and free, then you actually could argue that it has the opposite physiological effects. Like, you don't have elevated cortisol in that state because you actually are relaxed and connected. And so I think of it as a health intervention. So I would say that fun is not frivolous at all, and that's one of the biggest misconceptions people have about it, in addition to the idea that it's just for the privileged or that it's irresponsible. To which I'd say, do you really think that checking the news like 250 times a day is helping anything?
Being sad and angry all day is supposed to be your like natural operating state? all day long.
Right.
It's wild to me.
It's not actually helping.
Yes. And when people argue, it's like, well, there are sad and terrible things happening in the world. So like you are not giving that the proper weight if you personally go out and do something good for yourself. It's an insane idea to me.
I agree with you. And I would also say that if you were just draining yourself by feeling bad about everything going on in the world, you have no energy to go do anything.
Yes.
On a micro level, on a macro level. So it's not just for the rich and privileged. Yeah. In fact, rich and privileged people sometimes don't have as much fun. And it's not frivolous.
Yeah.
It's not frivolous at all. It's in fact essential. And if the world prioritized fun more, I think the world would be a much better place.
It is now time for the final ramble. One piece of gear you cannot live without. Is it your travel coffee mug?
I guess so. Actually, I was going to say a sun shirt, but let's go with that. I think that option, because it's very multi-purpose.
There you go.
Just need a way to rinse it out. Yes, my travel mug. It has a lid.
Oh, probably the best answer that we've had on the show so far. So congratulations. Best outdoor snack.
I was thinking about this. Right now, I would say red buds because it's spring. And red bud's a tree, and it has these little blossoms that taste like pea shoots. So
great
my favorite trailside nibble right now is a red bud. And my daughter loves it too. She'll take whole little like handfuls. It's like nature's popcorn, but it tastes like a pea shoot. You look so confused.
No. I'm loving this because I don't think anybody has said something that you're just getting off the ground while you're out there.
Not the ground.
Well, yeah, you know what I mean. Like, in the woods.
Catherine,
I had no idea that you're just out there just squirreling around for grub. This is great. This is great. I love it. What is your hottest outdoor hot take?
I was struggling with this one. I don't know if this is hot. My husband thinks this is like horrendous. I don't like raisins. Is that a hot take? I like them in a stew, like in a Moroccan stew. That's good. But like I also have type 1 diabetes. They're like little sugar bombs, but like I pick them out of like a trail mix. Ugh.
Well, I was about to say, like, we've had some people go against this particular snack, but I think you are the most adamant anti-gorper on the planet. Do you hear that? Big raisin?
Yeah, big raisin.
You're not getting past Catherine.
No, I'm picking them all out. And my husband and daughter will eat them happily because they're very pro-raisin. But I just feel like it's a waste on my blood sugar and not that tasty.
How is that living in a house divided?
It's hard. Actually, it works well. I was like, this works well because I don't want these. It's like having someone who likes, the M&M, whatever, Skittle flavor that you don't like the person who likes the lime, Who are these people?
Well, that person can't live in your house. Nobody who liked lime candy should be in your house. That's like somebody who's like, you know what the best candy is? Black licorice. It's like, well, guess who I'm not hanging out with ever again.
That's a hot take too. I also agree, but I didn't realize that raisin was a hot take until I said that, and then my husband was like, "What?
This is amazing. This is great." Yeah, I thought I knew you. Who would have thought raisin would be so spicy of a take? This is great. Thank you, Catherine. You're blowing my mind. You have blown my mind.